Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's track guide for the IRO4. We are back at Bathurst for what is primed to be such a fun week of racing. Yes, there can be some carnage here, but Bathurst, in my opinion, is one of the most fun tracks on all of iRacing to not only race at, but just solo lap in general. So, regardless of where you end up, it is just a fun week of racing, in my opinion. Before we go any further, I do want to say if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe by clicking the button below. It is super, super helpful for me to continue doing these track guides the more subs we get. So it costs you nothing. If you want to get notified of new videos coming out, go ahead and smash that button. Also, if you haven't come and hung out on Twitch, there is a link in the description below if you want to give me a follow there to get notified of when I am racing live on stream. So yeah, you can come hang out, interact. There are also some other links down below, like links to our Discord. We do have an F4 league that races on Thursday nights. If you're interested in joining that, there's information below. There's also a link to this lap on Garage 61, so you can compare your telemetry to mine, and a discount code for Moranis.com using my affiliate code. Anyway, enough about all that stuff. I also want to say that just like last week, we have recycled our video from season 4. The nice thing about these track guides is we are talking mostly about corner concepts and approaches to those corners, why we're doing those approaches, as opposed to taking the corner a different way. So everything still applies. I have updated the editing on the lap to make it a little bit more easily digestible, but this lap is the same as last season. Again, all those concepts still totally valid because we're not just doing like a brake here, turn here, accelerate, prosper kind of thing. We want you to learn the lap a little bit more in detail. But let's go ahead and take a look at that lap before we dive into the details corner by corner. Before we get started, let's take a look at our track conditions. We have a 20 degrees Celsius track with 18-degree air temperature. It's a pretty low air temperature, so we should have some nice acceleration on this particular lap. And we have moderately low usage at 42%. Once again, this lap was done and recorded for Season 4, but we do have a morning session for Season 1 2023, so the conditions should be roughly the same. As for our laps, we're going to be analyzing this 206.044. This was our fastest lap of the session. This was all done on one tank of fuel, so you can get 11 laps of fuel because the outlap here isn't recorded. You can also see all of these were pretty much in the 206s. Obviously some bobbles here and there. some other laps pretty close. This ending lap also pretty close. This one we actually were a little bit sketchy on the exit of the final corner. Otherwise, it probably would have been our fastest lap. But you can see that the lap times, especially on a cooler track, don't necessarily improve that much over the course of the lap. We're maybe improving by about a second. It is a long lap. And so the flat out sections, we will be a little bit faster as the fuel tank gets a little bit lower. But in general, going up and down the mountain, tire temps aren't killing us that much. So even on this technically what's our second lap because we had an out lap that's not shown before this, we can pretty much get on it pretty hard right out of the gate. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at this lap corner by corner. Turn one is a very important corner because it leads onto a long straight and the beginning of our climb up the hill. It's called Hell Corner and for good reason. If we mess up the exit here, we're starved for speed during our very long run to turn two. Because of that, we're focused on having a smooth exit. We'll start by braking right around the 75-meter mark, and our goal is to guide the car into the camber of the apex without touching the apex curbing itself. If we do touch the apex curbing here, it's likely to push us wide on exit. A quick note on camber. I talk about it a lot in general in track guides and in this track guide specifically, but have never really talked about what that means. Camber is any amount of elevation going from one edge of the track to the other edge of the track. In this case, we're looking at the dip at the apex as the camber we want to use. This camber allows us to maintain a little bit more speed through the corner than we'd be able to if it was completely flat, because it dips towards the apex of the corner and acts as a sort of small banking. As we settle into the camber, we can commit back to throttle early and we shift our focus to avoiding running wide on exit. We can place our right two wheels on the exit curbing here, but any more than that and our car will bottom out and limit our acceleration. I move to the left side of the track fairly quickly because as we head up this long straight, the right side of the track is a little bit more bumpy and the car does scrape and lose some acceleration as well. As we ascend the mountain, we need to focus on maintaining momentum. Any speed lost under braking or by sliding the car is harder to regain because we're now fighting gravity as well. That said, we can also use gravity to help us when slowing the car down. As we fight gravity while going uphill, we can brake a little bit easier than we otherwise would on a flat track. For turn 2, we can brake right around the 50-meter board briefly, and like turn 1, our goal is to once again guide the car into the camber and get as close to the apex curbing as we can without touching it. As the car settles into the camber, we can commit back to throttle, looking to place our left two wheels on the exit curbing and not going any further. The key here and in the following set of corners is how smooth we can be by having gentle inputs and avoiding any type of oversteer or tire scrub. Turns 3 and 4 are pretty connected, so we'll talk about them together. Turn 3 is actually a pretty straightforward corner on its own as we could take it easily flat out, but as soon as we come out of the corner, we're immediately at the entrance of turn 4. Turn 4, also known as the cutting, is a very important corner because we're still climbing the mountain and we're flat out from the exit here for a very long time, so a smooth exit and early acceleration is our goal. As we round turn 3, our focus should immediately switch to setting up turn 4. We want to get the right side of the car out to the white line, but no further. There's camber between the white line and the wall on the right that wants to pull us closer to the wall. This makes it harder to turn in and settle into the camber at the apex of turn 4. We want to brake smoothly and gently, allowing gravity to help us slow the car as we ease into the camber on the inside of the corner. As soon as the car starts to feel like it's getting pulled into the corner, we want to get back on throttle to maximize our exit. From the exit of turn 4 all the way across the mountain to Skline, we're completely flat out. So our goal from this point forward is to reduce tire scrub or getting loose and avoiding parts of the track where the IRO4 will bottom out. In turn 5, we want to get close to the apex, but there's a little bump there that unsettles the car, so we want to leave a bit of margin. On exit, we want to get our tires out to the white line, but no further than that. Any further over, and the car does start to scrape and bottom out, causing us to lose time as we climb the mountain. Turns 6 and 7 are pretty straightforward, with our goal here to smoothly turn in and exit without any need for correction and avoiding any sliding. Using too much curb at either apex can unsettle the car, so we want to just nip the curbs without risking any loss of momentum. We'll treat turns 8 and 9 as a double apex left-hander where we're looking to stay flat out and use the same arc to hit both apexes. We're aiming to take the turn 8 apex before we sweep out wide in between the corners to open up for turn 9 before heading back towards the second apex. As with this entire traversal across the mountain, we're looking to be as smooth as possible to avoid any tire scrub or any need for correction to maximize our speed as we head towards turn 10. Turn 10 is the last flat out corner before we start heading back down the mountain. We want to gently turn in right before the beginning of the entry curbing with a smooth arc that clips the apex and allows us to easily come back to the left on exit for our descent down the mountain. In other cars, I've used the entry and exit curbing here, but I found doing so in the IRO4 tends to do a little bit more harm than good. I'll also note that it can be a little bit less smooth when the tires are cold, so be careful on the first couple of laps, but it still is easily flat out. Turns 11 through 15 are known as Skyline, the Esses, and the Dipper, and they're probably best to talk about together because of how quickly they come at you. As we come over the crest at Skyline, we want to focus on keeping the car as stable and settled as we can. We're aiming to be close to the wall on the right and heading as straight as possible as we start to slow the car down by lifting and braking lightly. As the car compresses after we crest, we want to clip the curbing of the S's and start to brake a little bit more heavily and prepare to hug the upcoming wall for the right-hander. As we reach the apex wall, we can release the brakes and coast or use slight throttle to balance the car as we try to stay as tight as possible so that we can set up a nice entry into the dipper. Entering the dipper, we're aiming to clip the apex wall with the front left tire, knowing that the track drops away and will push us away from the apex wall just in time to avoid hitting it. If we set up the dipper the way we want to, we can be on throttle at the apex and full throttle easily on exit. As we land, the car may get a little loose, so we have to keep our concentration here as we aim to clip the following apex curb while avoiding the wall and keeping it floored. This whole section is really about timing, feeling, and flow. The overall goal here is to stay as smooth and in control as possible. Any loss of control can lead to big contact, and if it's recoverable, it can still lead to a huge loss of time or an accident as a result of others not being able to avoid us. As you practice this section, focus on being in control and smooth first, then start to take it faster and faster. The other thing I'll note is the pedal inputs are mostly used to keep the car in control here and will vary lap to lap depending on how we enter Skyline and the S's and what bumps we hit along the way. Turns 16 through 19 are another section we should really talk about altogether, as it focuses all around turn 18, known as Forrest's elbow. As we exit the dipper, we have a quick kink to the left before we then focus on hugging the turn 17 wall as we start to hit the sharper decline down the hill. We'll need to lift early here as we get to the turn 17 apex and start to carefully brake on exit. Be very careful when braking, as it's incredibly easy to lock a tire and end up in the wall. Our whole goal here is being smooth and controlled to get a good exit out of turn 18 as it leads on to the long back straight. So pushing the limits at the drop down here is a lot less important than making sure we can get a good exit out of the corner. As we slow enough for the corner, we want to commit to the camber near the apex, keeping our left tires on the white line. There's a part of the apex wall that sticks out here, so if we go any tighter than the white line, we run the risk of hitting that wall and losing a wheel. If we're controlled enough on entry here, we can get back on throttle fairly early, running out the corner to the exit wall before sweeping back to the left for the kink that is turn 19. Once again, it's very easy to lock a tire here, but especially early on in the race when the tires are cold and we're on full fuel. If you find that you're locking your front tires, try moving your brake bias backwards. I almost always use 57, but you can explore going even lower if you still find it a problem. Turn 19 is this flat out kink at the beginning of the back straight. Also, the middle of the back straight is kind of bowed, so if you stay in the middle of the road here, you will actually bottom out the car, so we want to either pick the left side or the right side of the track as we head towards the end of the lap. Once again, we're going to group a few corners together, focused around turn 21, which is the left-hander just up ahead. As we head through the kink that is turn 20, we want to make sure that we stay as far right as possible to open up our entry to turn 21. We'll start to brake right around the 100 board, and as we turn in, we're looking to get a late-ish apex that gets us as close to the curb without touching it as we possibly can get. The apex curbing here, as in other places, will push us wide on exit if we use too much of it. The exit of turn 21 leads directly into the apex of turn 22, where we're aiming to ride the apex curbing while avoiding using too much grass. Using any more grass than we do here will prevent us from being able to turn in enough to avoid running wide at the upcoming exit. At exit, we look to use a little bit of curbing, but not too much, as we get a good run towards the final corner. Turn 23, also known as Murray's, is the final corner. It's very tempting to try to late brake here, but the best approach when looking at lap time is to smoothly enter and exit the corner. If we're out of control on entry or exit, it can be very easy to take too much apex curbing, spin ourselves, or run wide into the grass on exit and lose control. We'll brake right around the 75-meter mark again, and our goal here is to get close to the apex curbing but not touch it. The apex curbing here, once again, can push us out wide on exit, so we want to avoid it. As we get to the apex, we want to be able to get back on throttle aggressively while aiming to use the exit curbing and avoiding the grass that lives on the other side as we power back down the main straight. And that's our lap at Mount Panorama in beautiful Bathurst. All right, everyone. Once again, I just want to give a big shout out to anyone who's subscribed, liked, commented, come and hung out on Twitch. Again, it's twitch.tv/Elgato con la Pipa. Check the description for more information about all the things that I plugged at the beginning of the video. Yeah, one thing I will say for Bathurst this week is just try to be patient, try to be smooth. Smoothness is really key here, especially as you're going up and down the mountain. Staying completely in control of your car and not trying to give it too much input. So as you're going up the mountain, remember, you're using gravity to help slow you, so you don't need as much brakes. As you're going down the mountain, you may need a little bit more brakes, but you want to stay in control. You don't want that nose to get too far forward, so not too heavy on the brakes, not too sudden on inputs, or else you're going to lock it, end up in a wall. So Yeah, just keep it smooth out there. Be patient behind other drivers across the mountain because the more you pressure someone, the more likely they are to make a mistake, which is okay on a track where there is room to make a mistake and you to get by. Here, there is no room going across the mountain. So, yeah, try to leave a margin of error for the cars ahead of you because if they crash, you crash if you don't leave that margin of error. But I do wish you luck this week. I hope you have a great time at Bathurst. I know I will. And until next time, take care of yourselves.